Having difficult conversations is something no one wants to do. But if you want to be an effective leader, you have to get comfortable with giving feedback, holding people accountable, and facing problems head on. The good news is they don't have to be anywhere near as hard as most people think. And in this video, I'm going to share with you 4 steps that are not only going to make it easier to have difficult conversations with your team, they're also going to ensure that they're more effective as well. If you're new here, my name is Byron Morrison. I'm the author of The Effective CEO 2.0. And on my channel, I put out videos on everything from mindset to leadership and becoming more effective in your role. So make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss future videos. So when it comes to having more effective difficult conversations, step number 1 is to stop calling them difficult conversations. What you need to understand is the reason why you avoid or don't want to have them is not because of the conversation itself. Instead, it's down to your perception of how the other person's going to react. Because if you knew they'd be calm, open to feedback, or responsive, then it wouldn't be difficult. This is why it's the fear of them getting emotional, confrontational, defensive that you're aiming to avoid. I speak to so many leaders who put off these situations for weeks, if not months at a time. And the problem with that is if you don't deal with them, you allow issues to manifest, underperformance to continue, and you also put yourself through a ton of anxiety and stress, especially with how much time you waste thinking about what you're avoiding. Not only that, if someone isn't delivering, then it's your job as a leader to let them know because you can't expect them to get better if they don't know that there's a problem. That's why you need to reframe in your mind what these conversations actually are, because instead of thinking of them as difficult conversations, which already sounds uncomfortable and scary, instead think of them as clarity conversations, because then suddenly it doesn't sound so bad. Because in most cases, that's exactly what they are. They're a discussion to understand what is happening, to get on the same page, and to figure out how do you need to move forward. Obviously, that won't always be the case. Like in situations, you need to let someone go or discipline them. But for the most part, I've had so many leaders realize that they've been putting off dealing with everyday issues as they've been viewing them as a far bigger deal than they actually are. So by reframing them as opportunities to get clarity, they went from something they feared to just being another discussion they needed to have. I saw this happening with a CEO client who was completely avoiding this part of her role. She wanted to be the leader that people liked, and she also didn't want to upset anyone. One of the frustrations she was having is a member of her team wasn't keeping up with responding to client emails in a timely manner, and she built it up in her mind that dealing with this was going to be this big, uncomfortable talk. What I pointed out to her, though, was she didn't actually know what was happening or why. So instead, before deciding what needed to be done, she needed to find out. So she treated this like a fact-finding mission to figure out what was going on. She said to the team member that she'd received some feedback that they hadn't responded to emails within the 24-hour time frame. So she just wanted to check in and understand what was going on and see if there was any way that she could help. It turned out that her team member had misunderstood what their key priorities were, and instead they'd been putting their focus on delivering client projects and reports as quickly as possible. Once they understood why, she could explain upholding a good client experience was also important. The member of her team then understood what was needed. She put in the new expectations, and since then, there's been no further issues. And this is a perfect example of the point that I'm making because she built it up in her head, convincing herself it was going to be this big, uncomfortable thing. But by reframing it as a clarity conversation to figure out what was happening, it no longer felt so bad. And she's now done this so many times that it no longer phases her. When there's a problem, she just talks to her team, figures out what's happening, and then deals with it, going from this big thing she was avoiding to something she's now comfortable with facing. So that's step number 1. Step number 2 is to play it out in advance. The problem with going in unprepared is it's easy for the conversation not to deliver the message you need it to, and also you risk being reactive, where your emotions can take over and get the better of you, which can then cause you to say something that you later regret or to not act in alignment with the best version of yourself. That's why instead take some time to think through in advance. What is the actual problem? What is the outcome that you want? What new expectations need to be set? Once you're clear on that, then you can think about what you need to say and how you need to clearly communicate it. If this is something you struggle with, it can also help to practice it out loud first. And I find with clients that it often helps us to go through in advance what they need to say and how, so they can gather their thoughts and feel more prepared. So you may want to find someone you trust to help you role play or prepare before you face it. One last thing to add is you don't want to obsess or overthink this, because the last thing you want is a sleepless night or wasted day where dealing with this situation consumes your thoughts. Instead, set aside a few minutes to create a plan and then deal with it. Step number 3 is to anticipate how the person may react. Like I said before, part of the reason you avoid tough conversations is because of the fear over how someone may react to them, and that's why it can help to think through in advance what could happen. Think about how are they likely to react? What concerns might they raise? What might they say? You'll never know this for certain, but thinking about it has two big benefits. Firstly, it'll allow you to see how the situation could play out, which can put you at ease as it may help you see that it's not actually that big of a deal. Also, by thinking about how they may react, you can then consider how you'd respond to it. Again, this will allow you to prepare and formulate a response so you're not put on the spot. You'll never know for certain how someone will take the message or respond to it, but by thinking through different scenarios in advance or what could happen, this is going to allow you to feel far more prepared and in control. Step number 4 is to reflect. After the conversation, take a couple of minutes to process what happened. Think about how you handled it, what went right, and what you could have done better. This is going to help build your conversation, allow you to learn from mistakes, and to prepare you better to handle similar situations in the future. So those are the 4 steps to go through to have better difficult conversations with your team, but I have a few other tips to make these more effective as well. When you know you need to speak to someone about something, face it as soon as possible, because all delaying's doing is going to cause you to worry about it and overthink it, and that's why it's far better to face it head on and get it over with. If that's not possible though, then to hold yourself accountable for actually doing it, schedule it and put it in your diary. But if that's something that you need to do, also make sure that you're putting it as early into the day as possible. The reason being is I find that if someone knows that they need to face something, they tend to get all of this anxiety and stress where it consumes their train of thought. I saw this happen with one of my private clients where whenever he needed to have a difficult conversation, it was all he would think about, meaning he wouldn't get anything else done that day. The simple solution to that is he started facing them first thing in the morning. That way he could get them over with and it wouldn't disrupt the rest of his day. And the final tip is when you're having difficult conversations, always stick to the facts, remove emotion from them, and always make sure you're focusing on solutions. At the end of the day, if you want to be an effective leader, you have to get comfortable with this part of your role. That means giving people feedback, holding them accountable, and facing problems head on. As with anything else, though, the more that you do this, the easier it's going to become. So there you have it, 4 steps to having more effective, difficult conversations with your team. Just to recap, step number 1 is reframe the conversation to clarity conversations where your focus is to figure out what is happening, get on the same page, and find a way to move forward. Step number 2 is prepare what you need to say in advance and how you need to communicate the message. Step number 3 is anticipate how the person may react so that you can then respond calmly. And step number 4 is reflect on what happens so that you can learn and improve for the future. Let me know your biggest takeaways from this down in the comments below. And if you have any questions, share them and I'll personally get back to you. Also, if you want to dive into this further, then in the description of this video, you can grab a copy of my book, The Effective CEO 2.0, where I'm going to show you how to become the leader your business needs. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss future videos and becoming more effective in your role. I've been Byron Morrison. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.